Hi, this is Val Hart, the real Dr. Doolittle, and today I'm talking with Mingo Morvin. He is a bear whisperer. He's a multifaceted adventurer, a rock and ice climber, a kayaker. He says he's more comfortable on rock walls and walls of ice and snow as he is probably on the ground, on what we would consider normal ground. He does remote wilderness adventures and wild kayaking expeditions. He's also a bear photographer. He looks at wildlife and bear behavioral research and has education programs that are very important. He also has a great interest in the welfare and health of all animals. In this vein, his nonprofit company, Bears Unlimited, has developed a section that deals exclusively with animal rights and welfare issues. He also writes and photographs a series of educational nature-based children's books called Atu's Adventures, and they are fun and wonderful, and they're an educational way to explore our national parks, other natural lands, and explore historical periods, natural and physical science subjects, anthropology, oh my gosh, so many things that you pack into Atu's Adventures, and of course other areas of natural earth studies and children's literature. Mingo believes that the future is not in our hands, but in that of our children. Our legacy must be relating that the stewardship of land and animals is a sacred trust and must be forwarded to our children. Thus, the education of our young, our mission will prosper and will be carried forth after we pass from the wilderness that we desperately love and want to protect. Welcome, Mingo. I'm so glad you're on the show today.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm delighted. You have had such an amazing history. You said you went on a 4-year tour of duty with the U.S. Marines, all your rock climbing, your extreme kinds of adventures. You have just done so many things. Can you tell us a little bit about what got you interested and started in this work?
Boy, it's kind of interesting. I'm not even too sure I understand that. It's just, I think biologically, genetically, I'm predisposed to just to being out in the wilderness a lot. I enjoy it. I have no fear of it. Mm-hmm. It's a technical issue, and I just enjoy being there. It's a great deal of fun, and I just enjoy it. I think that's the main thing about it is just there's such a level of enjoyment, and not only of the good times, but of the difficult times too. A couple times I've been, in fact, more than a couple times I've been almost killed, and those times you get to a point where you're just going like, well, that was kind of interesting, and it's still a positive experience regardless of how harrowing it could have been and how harrowing it was.
Well, and a harrowing adventure that you walk away from and live to tell the tale.
Oh yes,
is a good adventure, right? As long as you're able to walk away.
As long as you're able to walk away or crawl away.
Or crawl or be carried, but are still breathing and kicking, right?
Yeah, it can be pretty interesting at times. I mean, I've made phone calls to my base camps telling them that I probably would not survive the night. And because I was in a particularly nasty situation where I was being pounded by a storm. Wow. And I really didn't think I would survive. Just when you survive those situations, you take a look at it and just go like, well, that was kind of fun and very interesting. And then you analyze it and you go back to it. And you just really don't allow it to color the problems that you really did live through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
yeah. Well, you've been. Go ahead. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Ultimately, it just comes down to it. It's just a huge amount of fun, and if you can't live your life having fun, why bother?
Yes. Yeah, I get that. So many of us get trapped inside the box. You know, we literally trapped in the cubicle, trapped in the office, trapped inside, and we forget to reconnect with nature. You know, we forget to get out there and test ourselves and challenge ourselves and explore and live life really on the edge. You know, and that's really, it sounds like what you have done for a very long time now, since the early 70s?
Yes. Yeah, I've been very fortunate that some of the things I've lived through, and a lot of things that were just a tremendous amount of harrowing experiences that you kind of just enjoy at the end of it and look at it and just go like, that was a riot.
Well, tell me about one. What you keep talking about harrowing adventures. What kind? I mean, what one? Tell us one.
Oh, one of them was just on James Bay. I'm the only person that's ever survived kayaking on the western coast of James Bay.
Oh, my God.
One particular evening, I got hit by a storm, had to do a midnight paddle and in the dark, and 40 to 50 mile an hour winds, 12 to 16-foot seas. And on that one, I decided that it wasn't going to be a real good position and or a fun evening. And so you have to do it. You have to, I was in the swamp. There's no place I could have been safe at that position. So I had to move south by about 4 miles. And so you just prepare yourself and execute a plan, make a plan and execute it. And you hope that everything turns out, and you use all your skills, both physically and psychologically, to win. And I did. I mean, I came in at 4 o'clock in the morning, fairly well beaten up, but just really at a certain point enjoying the challenge. And that's what it became. It becomes a battle between you and Mother Nature. Either you win or you lose. And I'm not into positions of losing. Losing is dying. And so you just continue on. And ultimately, you enjoy the thrill of the battle that you do. That it just becomes a fun thing. Another time, I just took a fall up in the Sierras, broke my pelvis, and was able to crawl about 1.5 miles back to my vehicle.
Oh my God!
And that was the biggest. The worst part of that was ruining a brand new pair of jeans. But I'm going to heal, but these jeans are trashed.
The jeans are not going to make it.
They're not making it. So you crawl back there and with your buddies, and they look at you and stuff like, that was stupid.
Oh,
and you're like, yeah, it was.
Yeah,
but it was
well.
But,
God.
I do have to admit that wasn't a great deal of fun, and it was very painful. But at the same point in time, you get back there's a certain level of satisfaction that you just did one of the stupidest things that humans have done before, and you survived it, and you still got a smile on your face joking about it.
Right, and you got a good story to tell anyway.
Yep, it's like, it makes over a beer in a pub makes a great story.
Oh, yeah. I bet you're a good party goer. I bet people invite you to all their parties because they want to hear all these stories. You could entertain people for days. Oh, God.
Yeah, most likely. I have tons of them where I've crashed and burned, and the only thing you can do is laugh about it. That's obvious. So.
Yeah, laugh. Hopefully you could laugh and walk away like it was. So, all right, so let's talk about bears. So you said that in the early 80s you started really following animals into the wild to photograph them, right, and to learn from them. So tell us about that period in your life. What happened, and how in the world did you get so enamored of the bears?
Well, we started climbing in the high Sierras quite a bit, and these bears would come down here and try to steal our food all the time. And part of the time they would get it, part of the time we would win, and then we'd have to go out and haul more food in for them to steal. And I kind of figured at one point in time, either I'm going to have to get myself a machine gun to get them all, or I'm going to have to learn something about them. And then I realized they were actually smarter than I was, and I better observe these critters. And
smarter than the average bear, right?
Oh my God, yeah. Some of the things that they did were just thoroughly comical, number one. And at a certain point in time, you realize that little sucker's thinking about this. He's thinking about how to pull my food off that line.
Oh yeah.
And they use deductive reasoning to do this. Yeah. And at that point in time, I figured, well, I need to either stop coming to the Sierras, which wasn't going to happen, or learn about bears, and which did happen. And so it was a long learning process over almost 30 years now. I've been playing with these critters.
Wow.
And I started with black bears there, and then I got into brown bears up in Alaska and the Yellowstone ecosystem. And you learn each one of these bears poses a different challenge, and you just learn how they operate. And once you learn that, then you can start learning a great deal about them, and like how to communicate with them.
Right.
And once you learn to communicate with them, then it makes it fairly straightforward, fairly safe. I say fairly because systems fail all the time, and if they fail, you get eaten or mauled.
Right. Yes.
But most of the bears they're pretty easy to communicate with.
And I think, too, it makes a difference when you approach them with respect and an understanding, with the intent to connect with them as sentient beings. Very intelligent reasoning, like you said, lots of reasoning ability, and you show up. You're present, and you know how to play the game, which you are. You said you're a bear behavioralist for quite a while now. What, 25 years?
I probably really began to understand them probably in 1990 after working with them for 10 years in the Sierras.
Okay.
At first it was just blind luck, and then it was just, at a certain point, it's just like, if you beat enough pots and pans together and throw rocks near them, they will leave. Mm-hmm. And then at some point in time, I'm going like, that's an interesting behavior, and you start to see patterns of what they're doing and how they operate. Okay. And then at a certain point in time, it clicks in your head, and you're able to predict some of their behaviors. Mm-hmm. And then at that point in time, you get even further into it, and you can't predict it anymore. You understand it. Wow. And once you start understanding their behaviors, like I said, you can operate around them fairly safely. And I photograph bears from anywhere from, I think the closest bear I've ever been to was like 10 feet, and anywhere in brown bears from 20, 25 feet. They just don't seem to bother me that much. They look at me and just another ugly bear. And so they leave me alone. But, so it's definitely a fascinating journey to get to this point. But it didn't happen over a year or two.
Yeah, well, and you worked at it and put yourself in situations where you had to learn, and you did. So how do you think this works? How successful can one be when learning a bear's an animal's language, in this case, a bear?
How successful can they be?
Yeah.
Quite.
Yeah.
I believe that I can communicate with bears almost as well as I can communicate with some people.
Wow. Okay.
As long as they're rational.
Well, that makes a difference. Not all people are rational either, though. Hey.
Oh, I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
Bears they have two different types of behavioral. I call it their thinking behavior and their instinctual behavior. If you get involved with their instinctual behavior, you're probably going to get eaten. You'll get mauled. Mm-hmm. If you can continue to make them think about a situation, you're fairly safe around them. They are very predictable in many situations.
Okay.
And this I'm talking about black bears and brown bears. Polar bears are a little bit different in the sense that they're not as amenable to wanting to hang around with us. Mm-hmm. Brown bears and black bears, sometimes they're very, very amenable, and they'll allow you to be with them for hours. And it's really fascinating, some of their personalities. But you have to understand their personalities. Yes.
Okay. So black bears and brown bears and other types of bears, they'd have very distinct personalities. They're not all the same.
Oh no, they're as varied as humans are.
Okay.
Some humans
That's important.
you find and like. Mm-hmm. Some bears you find and like, and some bears find you and they like you. They just want. I always joke around about it as bears are curious about us for two reasons: either we taste good, or they just want to hang out with us and have a beer with us and munch chips and watch football. And those are the bears that are really kind of fun to be with.
Yeah.
The ones that want to munch you, they're not so much fun.
Not so much. No. Yeah, exactly. Oh, you sound like you've had some personal experience with that one.
I've been charged before, and that's kind of a harrowing experience, to say the least, for it. Yeah. But, if you understand why they're charging you, you can normally diffuse it. If you don't understand it, that's when you pull a bear spray. And
okay.
And so, But yes, I always carry some defensive measure.
Okay, that's important. In fact, that brings me to a question I wanted to ask. Do you have any tips for our audience on, or our listeners on how they should interact, or how if they encounter a bear, if they have a close encounter of a bear kind, what should they do?
Well, the main thing is remain calm. If you get freaked out and run, that usually elicits a response. If you pull a string in front of a cat, it attacks it. If you run from a bear, it does the same thing. Most of the times you want to stay away from them, though. If you don't understand them, they're very unforgiving at certain points. So the best thing to do, the safest thing to do, is stay away from bears. Never feed them, because once you run out of that last bologna sandwich, they want more. Your
hard to convince them you don't have any more.
Yeah, very difficult. I always tell people bears are nothing more than stomachs with 4 feet and a cute face. And they're mobile food munchers. And so as long as you can, you stay away from them and, take pictures of them and listen to if you're in parks, listen to their guidelines and comply with them, you'll have a good experience and have a good time with them. Right. People that don't know anything about them, that try to get too close to them, these are the people that are getting eaten and mauled, or if they get into an instinctual situation with them. That's never a good situation.
Yeah. Whew. Can you tell us an incident or something that would help us understand?
Well, bears are like guys during football season. You come to the refrigerator, do not take their beer or their chips. Bears are the same way. You go to their refrigerator, regardless of what they're eating, and they will generally charge you. I've been charged by going into biscuit root fields up in Yellowstone and things like this, or if you come upon them when they're eating, you just don't want to walk up and say, hey, we'd like to share your meal. You most likely become part of that meal.
Yeah, sure. I'll have you over for dinner sometime, right?
Precisely. You will become dinner. So whenever they're eating, you stay away from them. The typical warnings of never, walk up to a cub and try to pick it up and give it a hug. That's not going to work out too well for you. And so it's just generally a lot of common sense here. The bears will tell you what they want, and if you are wise enough, you will learn. If you don't, then you get munched. But,
all right. Yeah, I think a lot of our society kind of suffers from what I call the Disney complex, which is that we think that wildlife it should love us and respond, and want us to touch them and play with them and, and be friendly. And that's not the truth. So we have to be more present and pay attention.
Yes. Oh, very much so.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about Atu. He is absolutely adorable. So you have Atu's Adventures. It's a series of wonderful books. They are written at a reading level that's appropriate for 2nd through 6th grade students, and they're interactive, so parents and teachers and families can work through them. And the focus of each book is to learn about the features and animal residents in each of the wonderful parks. So you've done ones for let's see. The Grand Canyon National Park. You've done Yellowstone and Grand Teton National Parks. What else have you done? These are so darling.
Well, we just published Joshua Tree and Mojave National Preserve.
Wonderful.
So that's the 3rd book that's out. We have 2 more in production, and they'll be out probably towards the end of the year because I'm preparing for expedition right now, so I don't have a great deal of time. But the books are, like you said, when I write them interactively, because what we're trying to do here is bring parents, teachers, anybody that reads that book to the child to let him understand that we're part of a culture. And we don't want the kid to be sitting there there, the child will be sitting there reading by himself, trying to figure out some of this stuff. I use a lot of higher concepts in here.
Yes,
we're talking about different types of like flora and fauna. We'll be talking about their specific places within a park, why at one elevation you have this and why not at another elevation, whether it's flora or fauna. And we discuss a lot of these things. We talk about different concepts in geology, talk about geothermal things. We talk about difference between a bacillith and a monolith in Joshua Tree. And so we talk about a lot of geology, a lot of the Indian history and white history of the parks and of the lands that we're looking at. And we do this because we want to bring in an adult into the reading experience with the child for two reasons. Number one, to learn, and number two, to reinforce that adults are cool people too. And we can,
kids tend to
have
forget
an
that part.
enjoyable experience. Yeah, we do. And, you know, a lot of parents and other people just want to sit there and let their kids be babysat by video games and television, and that's what we want to stop. We would like to help in this process of bringing kids back to parents and teachers and things, grandparents, so that they can be all part of the educational process.
Oh, I love that. Okay. I can see why that would be really, really important. So, and by the way, everyone, Atu is a polar bear. He is absolutely darling. I think we may have missed that part, but I'm looking at a picture of him, and he is absolutely darling. He's a pretty good-sized bear, too.
Yeah, he's about 42 inches tall.
Okay.
And he whenever we take him to schools, he becomes a chick magnet. And he's actually, I have many, many pictures of him being held by young kids, and it's a crack up to see how they respond to him. And so, and what's interesting about the books are written through his eyes, not through mine. And that's another fascinating thing. Like he refers to me as his buddy that feeds him soup all the time, because that's what I eat on expedition. And so it's kind of fascinating. He's basically my alter ego, I guess. He sits in my office as I sit here and look at him now.
Okay.
And it's fascinating to get into it. And when I get into the mold of writing these books, I become the bear. And it's really kind of a fun thing to do, and it's enjoyable to try to think how kids would think and write it easy enough. I had in the Yellowstone book, it took me probably 2 weeks to write one page on continental divide. How do you explain the continental divide in basically 125 words and get it to a point where kids can understand it and why it happens, the actual process. Okay. And I went over and over and over in that thing, and I finally figured it out. And I figured it out by sitting there talking to kids.
Oh, wow.
And so we would discuss things. I would, I live in a neighborhood, of course, that has kids, and I would talk to them about it and say, okay, that's how I do it. I sat down and wrote it. And so it was kind of fascinating. So there's a lot of input into these books as to how we get the point across.
I love that. Wow. So let's talk a little more about Bears Unlimited. So you created Bears Unlimited as a way to, it's a nonprofit organization, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, and it's tell us more about Bears Unlimited.
Well, Bears Unlimited was created about November would be 2 years. And what we do with it is we do a lot of writing and research.
Okay.
And on my website, if you go to bearsunlimitedinc.org, you can read article after article after article about bears, wolves, and the wilderness in general. Okay. We're doing some, on this summer's expedition, I'll be doing a fair amount of data collection on global climate change. That's another area that I'm interested in. not only because of humans, but because of what it's doing to bear habitat. That's changing radically also.
Okay.
Not only polar bear, but brown bear and black bear. And there's some fascinating things going on with black bears vis-a-vis global climate change that a lot of people aren't picking up on. That since I study them, I have been noticing some things. But we write about these things. And then we also brought in another individual into the group, Nuala, and she does we opened up a whole new wing to it on animal welfare and rights. And so she's much more interested in that, and I do the wild end of the Bears Unlimited. And we have some spirited discussions about a lot of different things, but a lot of it comes out in our writings, and both mine and Nuala's. Okay.
Got it. So Nuala Wilderich is, that's what she does, and then you focus on the other. That sounds like a really important thing. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And she's completely independent. This is something that we established when she joined the organization, is that her writing is totally independent of mine. I have no editorial input whatsoever in it. So, and as a wild animal researcher and her being a domestic, Nuala's a vegetarian. I am not. Okay. But I eat a very limited diet of meat, mostly soy proteins. But at the same point in time, and it has to be that way just because of what I do. I'm going to spend 3.5 months in the wilderness this summer up in the Arctic.
Wow.
And I don't know too many, I hate to say it this way, but I don't know too many vegetations can handle that abuse. And that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
To spend 3 months, no hotels, no nothing. It's just a matter of you doing this.
Wow.
And
you're
so
going to spend 3 months. Go ahead.
So my diet is a little bit different. And then Nuala and I have had discussions about this stuff. But we respect each other's opinions, we respect each other's independence. And she respects what I do too, because I'm not a normal person when it comes to doing these things.
Yeah. Yeah. I can see that. And thank God for it. So you said you're going to do a 3-month expedition in the Arctic.
Yes. It's both a research and an adventure expedition.
Wow.
On the adventure part of it, I'm doing 5,500 miles, 1,000 miles on Mackenzie River, 2,500 miles across the top of Alaska, down through the Bering Straits, into Norton Sound, and then picking up the Yukon and going 2,500 miles up the Yukon in a 17-foot boat by myself.
Good Lord.
And while I'm out there, the research part of it is we're going to be doing a lot of data collection of water temperatures, water salinity, currents, and then a lot of the air temperatures and wind velocities and basic weather data collection on that. And then while I'm also out there, we'll be taking a lot of photographs and video footage along the riverbanks to see what the permafrost is doing. And so and all of this information will be available for free to local organizations, research groups. I've got some friends that are Fish and Wildlife that are very interested in some of the observations I'm taking on water temperatures in the Arctic. The Arctic Ocean is basically broken into 3 oceans, 3 seas: the Berings, Chukchi, and the Beaufort. I'll be crossing the complete Beaufort, half of the Bering Sea, and just about half of Chukchi. And I'll be taking water temperatures at 0 elevation, 10 feet, and 50 feet. And what that tells me is it shows the stratification of the water temperatures, which is important to geologists for researching global climate change. And then you add on top of that salinity of those areas. And all of these factors be key to GPS positions. So they'll be able to see for a full 3 months what this water structure is doing. And that's never been gotten before.
Wow.
And so Fish and Wildlife Service is really interested in that with their fisheries divisions, because they want to know why or what's going on in this water. And this will be the first time they actually get a good look at it. And so that's what part of the research is.
Wow.
And the other part of the research is just me just walking through, checking out the areas, checking out I'll be up on the ice floes of the Arctic Ocean, photographing and working with bears. We're also going to do some ice structural work up there. I'll be doing ice coring of the 2 and 5 year ice to take a look at what's going on with it, and taking density and taking a lot of pictures of it.
Wow. So will Atu be going too?
No, not on this one. He's just hanging out at home. He's holding down a fort, so to speak.
Oh, okay.
Now, this is a solo thing.
A solo thing. Oh, poor Atu.
A little arduous.
Too hard for the little polar guy. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's
interesting. He'd wreck, I'm sure.
Yeah. I'm sure he'll deal with it. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So everybody, again, y'all can go to, or our listeners, you can go to bearsunlimitedinc.org, or you can go to Mingo's website also, mingomorvin.com. So it's bearsunlimitedinc.org or Mingo Morvin, MORVIN.com, to find out more information. So why else do you think your work is important, Mingo? What is it that you want people to know about what you're working with?
I think that you can be on this planet and exist and become a liability to it by just breathing. Yeah. Or I think you can be a positive force towards, maybe not change, but education towards change. I don't think I have the power to change anybody's mind. I have the power to educate them, and that's all I'm trying to do. Through the children's books, through Atu's adventures, that's what that's all about, is to educate children about what's going on out there in the wilderness. When they go to Yellowstone or they go to Joshua Tree, they can actually take a look at these books and go like, wow, this is what this park is all about. These are the highlights of it. Yeah. And I'm very positive towards the rangers. I have a good working relationship with many, many rangers all through the national park system. And that came from rock rescues that I did in Joshua Tree. Some of them are just friends, some of them I climbed with. And we had generally I respect the vast majority of these people. Yeah. They do a good job. Yeah. And unfortunately they're underpaid, but they do a wonderful job for what they're doing. Yeah. And so what we're trying to do is just educate. We're throwing the information out there, and it's a pertinent information, and it's science-based information. It's not my opinion. And sometimes that gets me into trouble, too. But at the same point in time, that's the way it goes. Yeah. And I think that's the other thing about Bears Unlimited. We are basically a self-funded nonprofit. Okay. We don't, we accept small contributions, but we're not run by any large organization. And we want to stay that way for the simple reason is that when your budget is from one or two organizations, it's strings attached. Yeah. We don't want strings. Yeah. So everything that you read on Bears Unlimited on the site, you'll see is science-based. And occasionally there's some good humor in it too. I wrote a couple of pieces on Bears Girls, and I've gotten some comments about it. People laugh quite a bit.
Tell us one of them. I just have to know. Tell us one.
Oh, about Bear Girls? Oh, we're just discussing about him. I guess one of his latest antics was screaming down a hill at 50 miles an hour and crashing into his cameraman. And I made some comments about that. Matter of fact, I wrote a whole story about that. I figured this out when I was 10 years old sledding in Ohio, that this was a great idea. And it goes on from there, digresses, so to speak. And it's a pretty funny article, actually. Okay. People were reading it, and I'm getting a lot of good comments about it, about my sense of humor. The Mingo Morvin site, that's all photography. There's very little writing in it, maybe a few things, but it's got tons and tons of pictures of all the animals I work with, places I've been. I mean, there's places in Russia and Hawaii and D.C. and stuff like that. It shows a gamut of my photography, and so it's a fun place. It's a nice site and stuff.
Awesome. I so love what you're doing. This is so important. I love that you're bringing people back to nature, to the wilderness, and working on understanding the wilderness. You know what they say, what we understand, we preserve, and when we don't, we throw away. So you're bringing more understanding, and you're bringing it to our children so they can carry on our legacy, a legacy of positive influence and force, like you said, as opposed to the typical way, which I like the way you said that, to be on the planet and exist and be as a liability. That really touches my heart. I really appreciate what you're up to on this. It makes so much sense to me.
We try to bring people back to a more, maybe not a basic way to live, but a basic way to think that, this is the planet we live on. We just borrow it for a while. We borrow it for 100 years, and then we give it to somebody else to live on. And hopefully we give it in a little better condition, or at least the same. And unfortunately, we're not doing that.
No.
And so that's what Bears Unlimited's help, hopefully, can help people understand that. We have to work a little bit harder at living with the environment that we're here, that's given to us. If we destroy it, there's no place else we can go.
Yes.
And so that's not going to be a good position to be in.
No. Oh, I appreciate that. And I know that our listeners also do. We're all animal lovers. Even if most of us perhaps are most familiar with our more domestic animals, our dogs, our cats, or, our birds, our horses perhaps, but the wildlife is equally important and has a voice, and you're helping to bring that voice to the world. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's one of our missions to let people see. A little side note there, where I learned a great deal about bears is from my two dogs. They unfortunately they're both passed on because they would be about 20 years old now. But I watched Nicky and Bear operate, and there was Nicky had chow in him, and so he had this very domineering attitude, and Bear was a 120-pound chocolate lab. He was laid back and says, "Hey, where's my food dish?" But as they matured and went through their lives, I watched all the little changes in how they operated together because, dogs are pack animals. And it was very fascinating to watch them and to go out and play with them, hike with them and stuff. And Nicky taught me a great deal about the wilderness just by watching how he would do things. And I was just going I will always remember those two little mutts. And they were just really good friends of mine and just great teachers.
Yes. Yeah, they really are. When we learn how to pay attention and to connect and, like you said, communicate, that's all about communicating. Then it makes a huge difference. It expands our world. It reconnects us to the circle of life. It helps us understand the planet around us. Yeah, it's all good. All good. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you, Mingo. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Oh, all right. So how can people find Atu's Adventures?
Atu's Adventures, if they go to bearsunlimitedinc.org.
Okay.
Go to Atu's Adventures pages. He has his own page, and there's links to there right to my publisher. You can also get to Amazon and get them.
Okay.
And so they're available through Amazon.
Awesome.
And we're working on getting them into the national parks now. And so we have, in fact, when I come back in October, that's when we'll start that push to get them there. But right now, they're sold through Amazon and through CreateSpace, which is my publisher, and then through my website.
Awesome. All right, everybody. So go to bearsunlimitedinc.org. Look for Atu's Adventure pages, and check out these wonderful books and your photographs also on your site, mingomorvin.com.
Yes.
Thank you again for all that you do. Thank you for spending some time with us today, sharing your heart and sharing your love of bears and the wilderness. Appreciate it. Much appreciated.
Thank you. I appreciate it, and been a highlight of my day today. So,
Good.
Friday.
Well, and I hope it's a highlight of our listeners too. So so go out in nature and spend some time appreciating the world around us. So get out of the box. Get out of the box.
Amazing.
Yeah.
One thing that I always tell people is that don't be so afraid of dying that you're too afraid to live.
Yeah.
And that's such a big thing. And then people throw that sentence out a lot. But when they look at a lot of things that I've done and the things that I'm doing this summer, I mean, I have no guarantees that this summer is going to turn out well for me.
Yeah.
Bering Sea is a nasty place in a 17-foot boat. But at the same point in time, I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Yeah.
I just look at it from a point of view. It's like, this is going to be such a cool thing to do. It's like way beyond cool.
Wow.
And so it'd be a fun thing.
Yes. And so you're following your passion in your heart, and you're more interested in living to the fullest than living in a box, being afraid.
Yeah.
Thank you. Excellent message and a great tip. We will carry that forward, and I'm taking personal note of it myself. Thanks. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Okay. So we'll close it down here.
Time.
Yeah, and I hope that when you get back, let me know, and I'd love to hear what you find out and how the trip went.
Okay. One other thing on that is that if you watch the website, there'll be posts every 3 times or twice a week as to where I'm at, what I'm doing.
Okay.
Every day I give a position report for safety and to let people know where I'm at.
Right.
So people can follow this whole expedition on a GPS, on a map, through the whole 3 months of it.
Wow. Oh, that's awesome. Thank you thanks for letting us know.
And so, it's very doable just by watching the site.
How awesome. So we'll feel like we're going with you. Will you be submitting pictures and stuff also so we can see where you are?
And as soon as I get to Barrow, my first resupply point, I'll be sending out a batch of digital film, digital images, and Libby, my daughter, will be putting those up on the site. And so, she may do film. I'm not sure yet if we have that technical capability.
Okay.
But she's doing all of the images. And then in Kotzebue, I'll also send stuff out. And then again in Nome, and probably in Galena. So along the whole course of the trip, if people watch the site, they'll be seeing pictures of the thing as it's basically unfolding.
Wow.
And so, it's very heavily communicated. And part of that is safety and part of it's information.
Yes. Yeah, and the excitement of the adventure. For those of us who aren't quite brave enough to get in that boat and go off on this adventure by ourselves, oh my God, my hat's off to you, my friend. We can at least tune in and see what you're doing and celebrate with you and follow in your footprints. Thank you.
Yeah, it'll be a fun trip.
It will. I'm delighted for you. I can tell how passionate you are. Oh my gosh. Okay. So, again, one more time, everybody go to bearsunlimitedinc.org and we will follow your adventures, Mingo. Thank you. Thanks for all the hard work and for your love and your celebration of nature in our world.
Okay, well, thank you.
All right. So we'll leave it at that, and we'll talk to you later. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.